Welcome to part 2 of the Kenner action figure restoration project. And if you recall, in part 1, we restored 3 figures from Return of the Jedi. We did Weequay, we did Lando, and we did a Gamorrean guard. And with Lando, we had to do a little bit of paint matching. And today promises to be another restoration where we do all different kinds of things to get the figures back up and running. And if you stay towards the very end of the video, there's a surprise. I've done some customization of one of the figures as well. So it's a restoration and customization video. So please stay tuned till the end of the video. But today, I thought we'd open up the case once again. And let's see. Today, we're going to focus on 3 Ewoks. We're going to do Logray. We're going to do Teebo. We're going to do Chief Chirpa. So, let's take a look. We're going to move this out of the way. And just like the 4, what we're going to do is we're going to start by giving everybody a good rinse in some just boiled water. And there's my water right there. And what I like to do is I like to make sort of a simple solution. And it's a great way to degrease and deodorize the figures. And that is by taking hot water, adding a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to it. Not too much, just a little bit. And then we're going to take each figure and we're going to talk about them before they go in. So Logray is in good condition. Now, I don't see anything on Logray that needs any sort of restoration other than just a degriming and degreasing. So these figures have been in this case for probably decades. And there's a very musty, sort of attic-y smell to it, very earthy, moldy smell to all of these figures. So the isopropyl alcohol does a nice job in sort of deodorizing them. And then with Teebo's like in mint condition. I don't see any yellowing. I don't see anything going on with Teebo whatsoever, other than just, again, that smell and that grime. There's sort of a stickiness to them. So we're going to stick them in there. Now, when it comes to Chief Chirpa, there's a little bit going on. We're going to do some customization or some restoration on this one. So as you can tell, his belt, his knife, he's got a little medallion there. Those have all been worn by age. The belt on the back, and there's even a slight amount of yellowing discoloration there. So we're going to do the hydrogen peroxide treatment, and we're going to see if we can de-yellow that to some degree. But first, we're going to put him in the bath with everybody else, and we're going to give him a good scrub with the power wash. So in they go. Just let them sit there for a little while, and then we're going to take, as always, I like to use this Dawn power wash. Now, this is the heavy-duty power wash. I'm not sure if it makes any difference, but this is what I have on hand today. And again, a soft toothbrush. Now, also, I had a recent video in the most recent restoration. One of the commenters, his name was Sockspix, recommended a magic eraser for things like magic marker, crayon, and those types of things. So if we see any of those on these figures, we're going to use the magic eraser. All right, so let's start. So we put Logray in first. Take him out. I'm just going to give him a little spray with the power wash. And just start scrubbing. One of the things about old figures who've been in musty attics or basements is a lot of times the mold grows in these little foot pegs. So you want to take a moment and just make sure you get those. And then, of course, in between the hands and wherever the joints are, there always seems to be a higher concentration of grime and gunk. And again, Logray seems to be in near mint condition other than just that smell. They really do smell like if you haven't gone into your shed in a year, you know, and it's been a long cold winter or something, and then you go out to your shed and there's that sort of earthy, musty smell. That's what it smells like, these figures. All right, so there's the low gray. We can dunk them in there. See how things go. Low gray looks really, really good. So we're gonna let him just dry off or chill out there for a minute. Low gray. There he is. I'm gonna drop this down a little bit. Maybe that'll help. There we go. That's better. All right. Now we're gonna take Tebow. Same thing. Power wash and go. And this Tebow figure, again, other than the grime and the musty smell, all the paint just checks out. It's just an absolutely pristine figure, minus missing all of the accessories, but we'll get to that. All right, let's see. Tebow, he's one of my favorite Ewoks. I just like the gray and dark and light gray striping. But man, that figure looks really, really good. The face looks good. So we're gonna let him dry. Actually, you know what? We're gonna put him back in. We're gonna let them deodorize for a little while. And then we're gonna get to Chief Chirpa. Now, so Chief Chirpa, power wash. Now, I've got plans for Chief Chirpa. We're gonna put him in a hydrogen peroxide solution. We're gonna let him sit in the sun for about 24 hours and see if some of that yellowing comes out. That'll be part of his restoration plan. And again, now this figure is a little bit more beat up, so we're gonna see if we can de-yellow him. And we're gonna touch up the paint and restore him back to factory. But if you stay towards the end of the video, I have sort of a surprise that I'm looking forward to sharing with people, seeing if they like it. But Chief Chirpa, this one here, is especially grimy. There's just a stickiness to it. There's more of like a surface stickiness, like it was almost like covered in honey or something. So we're gonna try our best to get that off. Power wash usually takes it right off. All right, dunk him in there, see what we got. Oh yeah, now you can tell. So this Chief Chirpa here, he needs a lot of work. A lot of work on this one. And then this yellowing, so you can tell that's the natural color of the plastic. And this area here has been yellowed by time and tide and whatever. So we're gonna stick him in some hydrogen peroxide. Now, this here is the stuff that I have on hand. Now, this is not generally the appropriate strength. So this percentage is 3%. And what you really want is a stronger strength, like 7 or 12%. But this does work if you give it more time. So we're going to take Chief Chirpa. We're gonna put him in another Pyrex dish. We're gonna put him out in the sun and cover it with some plastic wrap for about 24 hours. And we'll see if some of this yellowing will go away. All right, so stay tuned for that. All right, Chief Chirpa has been sitting in the direct sunlight in the hydrogen peroxide bath for approximately 30 hours. I gave him a full day and a half, and you won't believe the results. So here he is after sitting in there, and look, all the yellowing is completely gone, not only on his bottom, but his ears. All the yellowing is completely gone. And there we have a completely cleaned Chief Chirpa. So in fact, not only did it take off the yellowing, but it even lightened. These are different plastics here. And you can even see in this Chief Chirpa, there's a little bit of the same. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take this Chief Chirpa and restore him to make him look like that. So here's a really pristine example of a Chief Chirpa. And you can see here, he's got the white medallion and he's got the the black belt and knife, and it wraps all the way around like that. He even has white teeth and black eyes. So get right up close there. You can see really, really nice Chief Chirpa. And that's an original accessory, an original hood. And I have several. I have many, many Chief Chirpas. Here's a couple others that I have in my collection that I keep in these cases, and they're all completed. This one here is a little bit worse for wear. I'll get to restoring him one of these days. You can see the belt is a little bit worse for the wear. But here's another really great prime Chief Chirpa. And this figure suffers a lot from wear. The paint on some of the Return of the Jedi figures was very, very light, and it wasn't protected well, so it rubs off very easily. Very similar to the original 12 figures, the original A New Hope figures. So we're going to use this as our base. We're going to refer to this Chief Chirpa, and we're going to get into some fine detail painting. Now, I really love to use this angled brush. This is a brush that has a slight, maybe 10-degree angle on it, and I really like it for this fine detail work. It has a very sharp tip to it, and it's really going to allow me to get in and do that. Now, because I'm an old guy, there is another tool that I find very helpful for this type of painting, and that's these glasses, these magnifying glasses. In fact, it even has this button here at the top. It's a very powerful light, so I can really get in there, magnify, and see what I'm doing. So I'm going to use this as part of my, this is an essential kit, restoration kit piece for me for fine detail work and crafting and those types of things. And then finally, we're just going to talk quickly about the paint that we're going to use. So I always like to have a couple of these disposable cups. This was like from a takeout, like a salsa takeout. And this was a cat food. We have two cats, and these are those fancy feast things. And these are great for paint. So I have 8 or 10 of these on hand, and I love to mix and store paints in these. Really easy to work out of. So get yourself 1 or 2 of those. And then we're going to use this here. This is an airbrush reducer, and I do own an airbrush that I use very frequently. We're going to use this reducer to help thin the paint. So this is a little bit different than water. This is, it's water-based, but it definitely helps thin out. So if you have inexpensive craft paints, like this one here, this black craft paint, this reducer really does a nice job and thins this thick paint out so you can get the details. And then finally, we're also going to use airbrush white for the medallion. This is a water-based, very, very good quality paint that we can use. It works very well with this. We can thin it out and fill in those cracks a little bit better. And then we're also going to add a little bit of sealer. So when we're all done with that, we're going to go over it with this satin varnish and complete it. All right, so now gather your things, and I'm going to start the painting process. Okay, so what I've done here, I've taken some of that cheap black craft paint and I've put it in this cup. And I've got this cup. What I'm going to do now is take a little bit of this reducer and just squirt a tiny little bit of it in to the cup. So there's a little bit in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort of add the reducer to little dabs of the black paint. We're going to thin it out, and then we're going to put it on the Chief Chirpa. We're going to start with the black first. So because I need to wear my magnification glasses, I may have to move this figure out of frame for a moment so I can get the details, and then I'll bring it back up closer. So we'll see how it goes. All right, let's start. I'm just making this a little bit thinner so that it flows a little bit better. And we've got it just about where we want it, I think. I'll try to wipe some of the excess off. All right. Just go very slowly with this process. Slow and steady. We'll probably have to do a couple of coats, but that's okay. what I'm going to do is I'm just going to establish where it is that I'm going to paint on this coat, and then I'm going to go back and fill it in. So there's that. Just take your time, and we can wipe off if we make a mistake. Okay, there's that. Now we're going to get into some of this. Now, if you notice on this Chief Chirpa, there's actually two sections of the build. There's an upper part that sort of rides up, and then the lower part. And both of those on the original paint job are colored in, so we'll do that too. That makes it a little easier because you don't have to cut in that belt as hard. It's not as hard. I'm not going to add the varnish just yet because I really want the black paint to flow to where I want it, and then I'll go over it with the varnish. And we're going to have to touch up a little bit too, so go a little bit like that. So, yep, let's do that. Take off some of the extra paint. And this is a tricky little paint job because there's fur that sort of goes over the belt. So we're just going to take our time and do every layer, very thin layers of paint until the figure's all done. So we're going to establish this paint line. All right. We're going to let each coat dry in between. Probably takes about 10 minutes, and then go back over it again and again until the entire thing is covered, and then we'll go back and clean up any of the slop that we've done. There we go. That's it. Just like that. I'm only going to hit the surface, and then I'm going to go in and cut in along those lines very carefully on the second and third coats. Just trying to establish the actual outline of everything right now. Okay. Now, when it comes to the eyes, a trick that I have is, so that right eye, your left on the screen, has been done, and it fills in the eye socket beautifully. And what I'm doing here is I'm halfway done on this one. But what I do with the eyes is I take my brush and I dip it into the black paint, just a tiny little amount, and then I dip it right into a little bit of the reducer or the water, just a tiny little bit, and I let that sort of flow. And then what I'm doing is I'm just touching the brush right in there, and I allow the paint to fill. I don't paint as much as I just allow the paint to flood the eye socket. And what that does is then it goes immediately into the area. You don't have to worry about slop or paint or any of that. And just like that, it's time for the white. We've let the black completely dry on the figure. I let it go out in the sun for about 30 minutes, and it's nice and dry. So now we're gonna go and do the white medallion on the front there and the teeth. And what we're going to use, I have this stuff. This is water-based airbrush paint. And obviously I'm not going to airbrush it. It's way too small for that. But this is some of the stuff I have. And it's a very, very inky white. I love the way it flows. It works really, really well. So what I've done is I've just poured a little bit of that into this cup again. And I do have water and reducer if I need it. If I need it to go a little bit thinner. I don't think I will, but it's right there. So now all I gotta do is get to it. So I'm just gonna shut up and see what we can do. thing. So I always like to have a wet paper towel with me that I can use to sort of blot excess paint off. And it just really keeps everything nice. Okay. Now this is definitely going to take a couple of coats. White is always tricky. It's always going to take a couple of coats. But I love the way this white flows on the brush, even just right out of the bottle. All right, now we're going to do the teeth. And just like with the eyes, we're going to let the paint just sort of flow into the mouth. And again, if we mess up, we can always touch it up. No big deal. I'd say that's pretty good. We'll let it dry and see if it needs another coat. Okay, now it's time for the varnish. This is a varnish that dries, it's called satin varnish, but it really dries matte, and I really like it. So let's see. Oh, wait a minute, is that the wrong one? No, they're the same. Okay, so semi-matte. Yeah, semi-matte. So here we go. I just put some into this little cup. And we're just going to go over everything we did. Let's start with the white. We'll do the teeth too. Ready? There you go. Just a little swap. A little swap right across the teeth. All right, now let's do the black. Do the eyes. Just like we did before, we're just going to let it, just going to drop it in there and let the varnish just sort of flood the eye socket. All right, now we're going to do the necklace. You don't have to go crazy with this. This is just to help seal all that work that we just did. It's going to dry nice and matte. And just go over the belt areas that we did. There should be plenty of this on the brush, really just one little dip for what we're doing. Still plenty of it on there. All right, and then I'm just gonna do the knife accessory there. All right, then we're gonna do the back. And you can do 1 or 2 coats of this, or as many coats as you want. I'm just doing one little coat. It should be fine. This is good stuff. So there we go. Okay. There he is, Chief Chirpa. So all we got to do now is round all of them up that we restored, accessorize them with some vintage accessories. And now here's the reveal. I do have a couple of customs that I worked on as well at the same time. So stay tuned. We're going to go over the restorations and the custom Ewoks. So here we are. 3 more vintage Kenner figures from the very kind donation from my buddy Dave from that awesome collector's case completed. This time we did low gray, we did T-bow, and we had to do a complete restoration on Chief Chirpa. This one was the most complicated, where we had to de-yellow him, and all of that yellowing is gone in the back. We had to do a complete paint restoration, sealing, and then the other 2 were just degreased, degrimed, and deodorized in power wash, isopropyl alcohol, and then just sort of generally cleaned and freshened up. They all came out really beautifully. These figures really didn't need anything other than just, like I said, a cleanup. So, as always, it is now time to accessorize these figures because I can't stand incomplete figures. So, these are all original Kenner accessories, and let's put them on, and then we've got a big surprise right at the end. So stay tuned. So let's start out with low gray. So low gray here, the Ewok medicine man, he has his medicinal satchel, and he has his very ornate headdress, which I think always looks really cool. And he's got his staff. So we're gonna put him there. And there we go. There's low gray. He looks really cool when he's all gussied up, right? And then we get to T-bow. Now T-bow has his warning horn, and he has a kind of a similar headdress to T-bow. He has sort of like a beast with some sort of vegetation ornament, and he has his axe. Now his axe is really, really thick, and it takes quite a bit to get him in there, to get this axe in there. So what I like to do is I just like to stick it in back of his, he's just carrying it around like Gimli. There's that. Okay, so there's T-bow. And finally we get to the man of the hour, Chief Chirpa, like I said, who needed everything. So there he is, all completed, beautifully repainted and restored. I tried to make it as close to the original colors as possible. And we matched Chief Chirpa here, a really nice example. So let's put his headdress on. And of course, most of the work that we've done is now covered up by that. And let's accessorize him with his staff. See how close we came. So here's an untouched original, and there is the completely restored one. I think it came out pretty good. So now, like I said, we've got some kind of interesting surprises towards the end. So not only did I do these, but if you recall, I writ dyed in forest green. I writ dyed some extra T-bow accessories, and this is synthetic green writ dye. And I really like what I've done, how it came out, not what I've done, but how it came out. And I thought it would be really fun to give him a blaster. So that's a vintage Stormtrooper blaster. I sprung for it. That's an original, not a reproduction. So there's that one. It's T-bow there. And then finally, here's the other one. So I actually have multiple Chief Chirpas in various states of decay. And I took one and I said, you know, while I'm writ dyeing things, let's see what happens if I writ dye Chief Chirpa. And here he is. This is the same exact Chief Chirpa figure. You can see the thing. And I gave him, I had an extra Ewok thing. That is from Warwick, or what's the other one's name? Lumat. I think that's Lumat. That's an extra original vintage Lumat. And I gave him an extra Chief Chirpa staff. And this is jet black Rit dye. Now, what I did was I went over with the weathering powders. I used a brick red weathering powder. And what that does is you can kind of see how it gives highlights to it, but yet it's still, I think, pretty consistent with the Ewoks of the Kenner line. And then I painted his belt a rich brown, and this is sort of almost like a coppery color. And then I did the same thing. I went over it with I sprayed it with Tamiya matte spray, and I even gave him red eyes. I don't know if you can see the red eyes there, but I thought he looked really cool. So, you know, maybe there's a variant in the Ewok culture that has red eyes, but there's just something about him that I thought looked pretty badass with the red eyes. So here's another custom, complete custom. So, once again, we've got a bunch of Ewok restorations and a couple of customs. I think it was a really fun project. It's pretty easy to do. I have Rit dyeing tutorials on my channel. I've got restoration channels on how to paint and do other things, weathering powders, all of those things. I am a co-host of the Stoned and Hyper Show with my good buddy, the Stoned Mandalorian, who's also a customizer and a diorama builder. Every other Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have a good time. We break down all kinds of Star Wars things, Black Series, vintage. We even do Jurassic Park and G.I. Joe and other things. We'd love to have you there. Now, stay tuned for the next three videos, next three figures that I'm gonna restore. Thanks as always. I appreciate the support. Go ahead and give it a like and subscribe if you can. Take care, and I look forward to the next one.